right. There we go. All right. Coming down in three, two, and one. Well, Mayor Brent, welcome back. Mayor's Monday here at WSAU.com. We're not in the same room per se, but again, we're in the same room in spirits, I guess you could say. Well, you're down at the office in Stevens Point. I'm here at the office in Wausau, and again, through the magic of technology, we're in the same spot.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with pandemic concerns today. More convenience. So
Yes,
one of
exactly.
one of the things that has come out of the pandemic, I guess.
Yes, I mean we've talked about that. You're going to continue, some easier access to meetings for the public and things like that. I know that was something you kind of had to scramble to put together during the pandemic, but now that most everything has been lifted, I mean most everything is back open for business. I'm sure that includes the city of Mosinee. You want people to know that hey, we are here and we welcome your tourist dollars.
We certainly do, and we always have, even through the pandemic, as safe as we could. Our businesses stayed, for the most part, open as much as they could, despite the brief shutdown period where there were restrictions, and tried to do that based on their own judgment. And the city of Mosinee really stepped up during that time frame and continued to support those businesses, and that's why I think that all of them came through successfully. It was certainly a year that we are happy is in the rearview mirror. And now, as you look ahead, they face different challenges, especially people in the service industry, small business. They depend on seasonal, on part time, and it's now the new crisis, so to speak, is a lack of people stepping up to take the plate and go to work.
Yeah, and I think that's especially true as you and I were talking just a little bit off the air in the service industry, which is something that you've put an emphasis on in your community. Be that the Mosinee Brewing Company, be that a couple of new restaurants that have opened up around the brewing company in that part of your downtown. That's something that you've really put an emphasis on, and something that, as you mentioned, most of those businesses have come through. They're still open. They're still there. Now they just need a little help as far as payroll go, or not payroll goes, but workers go.
Right. And it's something we really have put a lot of investment in from the city's perspective, especially in our downtown business district. We invested in several new businesses down there, the brewery, Mexican restaurant. We've invested in others in different ways with facade grant rehabs. We've invested in a different business sector entirely, in manufacturing in our Central Wisconsin Business Park substantially. We've invested in different businesses out there, especially Aero Global. We've invested substantially in them, and others who have constructed new businesses out there. Wisconsin Mechanical Solutions was a new business. Transport Refrigeration was a new business. So, long story short, we've all got a stake in this, whether it's your local government, your local residents, your local school district, your businesses themselves, and we all need to do our part to make sure that we continue functioning strong.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of businesses right there. I mean, a lot of those businesses do have job openings, and especially in the manufacturing sector, those are jobs that you can build a life with and support a family on.
Right. It's just try and, unfortunately, remember the days of 2008, 2009, when our unemployment was rising, and you would just hope to find a job as different businesses were redacting their workforce. And now you can drive around central Wisconsin and see now hiring signs all over the place. In fact, I, just out of curiosity, went on the Job Center website for Wisconsin yesterday and narrowed it down to Marathon County. And in different industries, different sectors, there are literally hundreds of jobs posted just on that website in Marathon County alone. So for people who are unemployed, there are options out there. And, unfortunately, um, we're in a situation now where perhaps at one time additional benefits for those who may have lost their job or been unable to find employment during the harder times of the pandemic. I think those benefits, it's time that they've run their course. And unfortunately for some, I think it may be encouraging them, depending on what industry or sector they're in. It makes it easier to stay home than it does to go out and actively job search.
Yeah, and I know that's something that's been on the radar, of course, down in Madison for quite some time. And I don't know exactly when they're going to be having votes on that bill, but of course, that's something that we're going to be keeping an eye on as the weeks progress. Because right now, the focus in Madison is the state budget. Obviously, that's something that that you watch very closely as well, because there's a lot riding dollars wise for the city of Mosinee when it comes to that 2 year document.
That is true. The state budget, as folks may or may not know, the state has a soft deadline, so to speak, of June 30th to have a new budget in place. When July 1st hits, we're in a new biennium. We're unlike the federal government, the state of Wisconsin doesn't shut down if a new budget doesn't pass. However, that is the target date, and the Joint Finance Committee in Madison, as I understand it, has done their work now and will be passing that on to the state legislature and the governor. But the state budget affects the local governments in a whole number of ways. Our largest source of revenue is property taxes if you're a municipality, and behind that, our second and third largest sources of revenue come from the state of Wisconsin in the form of general state aid and in the form of transportation aid. And so what the state decides to do each year with the budget will affect us. And if you've been following the state budget, the product that has come out of the Joint Finance Committee, the state of Wisconsin's in a good position. It really is. And the biennium was projected to end, I think, somewhere just shy of $2 billion in surplus. And now projections to end the biennium in 2023 are, I believe I heard something in the neighborhood of an additional $4 billion on top of that surplus. So the state is in very good shape despite what it's went through, and what every state's went through in terms of the pandemic. And due to that, the product that I have heard coming out of the Joint Finance Committee is really focused on income tax cuts, especially now in the lowering the tax rate in the third tax bracket in the state of Wisconsin, and also buying down property taxes, reducing property taxes. And I mentioned property taxes being one of our largest sources of revenue. So one thing that the state of Wisconsin is looking at is eliminating the personal property tax, and that affects us. This is not anything new. That's been a target of some for several sessions, that as long as I've been around as mayor. And the personal property tax is a convoluted tax. A business goes out and buys a piece of kitchen equipment, for instance, they pay personal property tax on that. It's a piece of personal property, and that goes to the city. And it's convoluted, and the state's tried to eliminate it. However, it is a source of revenue for us. And so one thing we'll be looking for the state of Wisconsin to hopefully do is backfill that tax with state aid in the form of a personal property tax aid. And we have received that in the past. There's been partial repeals of the personal property tax, and we get state aid. The issues that you run into with that is it doesn't necessarily account for new business over time. Once that tax is repealed, if I get a new business, I'm unlikely to get more state aid for that. It's a frozen in time amount. And the other part is you have to rely on the Department of Revenue to properly administer it. The city of Mosinee actually had to sue the Department of Revenue one time because it misinterpreted the personal property aid statute. So we'll be watching that, as boring as it may sound to your listeners, as the state budget progresses. And we'll be looking at where we're going to come out on transportation aid and general state aid as the state looks to lower that burden on the homeowner, which is great. But at the same time, cut income tax. The income tax cut is great for local government. But
Hmm.
while we don't get a sales tax at the city of Mosinee, the Marathon County gets a sales tax, 0.5%. And as you drive down income tax, you put more money in the consumer's pocket. And it's likely that that consumer is going to go out and spend that and generate more sales tax. That's going to stay, some of it at least, right here in Marathon County, and that's always good. I've always been a champion of income tax cuts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the next thing I was going to ask you because, again, if you're putting an extra $40 a month in somebody's pocket, whatever that may end up amounting to based on how many, whether it's just yourself, you have a family, things like that. Of course, there's, again, just how complicated taxes can get. Yeah, you've got an extra $40 a month. That sounds like a night out at the Mosinee Brewing Company or taking the family to a restaurant somewhere that's a more of a sit down establishment than just a quick serve fast food, whatever they call it these days. So that's something that obviously a lot of people can benefit from.
Yeah, you can't understate the velocity of money, and through an income tax cut, you get true stimulus. This isn't a manufactured stimulus, as we've had several rounds now for those who get a stimulus check. Are they likely to spend it? Sure. I think you've seen consumer spending go up considerably because of stimulus. However, this is money that is being generated from actual income from people in the workforce and then putting it back into other business, allowing them to create more jobs, more revenue, and more sales tax. So again, you can't understate the velocity of money that comes from income tax cuts.
And again, we'll be watching that in the next few weeks to see just exactly what comes out of the state budget process. The idea of teamwork, depending on what side of the aisle that you're on or the other, hasn't exactly been there in Madison some of these days. But this is something that, again, they just got to figure this out because, as you mentioned, that soft deadline is coming up here pretty quickly here at the end of the month. One more thing that we did wanted to talk with you about before we let you go. Speaking of something that generates a lot of revenue for the city, the Central Wisconsin Airport, located right there in your backyard in Mosinee, just off the interstate. You've got some of the biggest improvements, biggest projects that they've had since this airport was built. New hangar, new runway, things like that, and that all means new revenue for the city and the region.
It does. The Central Wisconsin Airport, I've lived in Mosinee, except for when I was away at school in a brief time during the start of my career. I've lived in Mosinee, and that airport during my lifetime has just substantially taken off. And I'm excited, especially in the most recent years, because that's when we've seen some of its most significant growth and improvements. I actually serve on the Central Wisconsin Airport Board in a different role of mine from Marathon County. And we are now on our third new hangar construction in the last just several years. And you can tell that this is private hangars. You can tell that people are interested in coming to an airport that has full service for them. And that's why you're seeing that at Central Wisconsin Airport. And as we get passenger travel to increase and come into our city, we want to be able to keep those people if they're here for business or they're here to visit family in the Central Wisconsin area. We'd love to have them stay right in the city of Mosinee and do their lodging, do their business here. And that's why we continue to also focus on the construction of a new hotel in our downtown business district. As we've talked about in some prior visits I've had with you, the city is still actively pursuing a new hotel in its downtown business district. And I've been getting a lot of questions on that because we struck a development deal about a year ago. But as I explained, when that transpired, that development deal has an extended timeline. And right now we are still on track to meet those deadlines and are still having very positive, active discussions with a potential hotel in our downtown. So I hope people will be patient and we'll continue to move along and keep you updated as we can.
And if I remember correctly, you've got until the end of the year this year to start breaking ground on that. Is that correct?
The potential investor has until actually August to decide to move forward with closing on the real estate, or at least waiving some contingencies on that real estate. And then construction under the development agreement has to be doors open, hotel built by the end of 2022. So we have a little over around a year and a half yet. Time frame for that hotel to be open. But as I'm sure, or hopefully you can appreciate, the projects of this size for our community don't happen overnight. So
Yeah. Deadlines make deals, as they say sometimes, right?
that is true. It's always good to have a deadline, Mike.
Yeah, whether it's again state budgets, whether it's local things, yeah, deadlines tend to make deals sometimes, or maybe even Aaron Rodgers type deals as to whether he's going to be under center for the Green Bay Packers this year or not. We'll find out in September, right?
We sure will. You're asking the wrong guy.
By the way, one more thing then before we let you go. What's the coolest thing in your office?
The coolest thing in my office.
All I'm seeing right now is just a nice wooden backdrop. You know, you've got the ceiling there, the vaulted ceiling a little bit. You got anything else in there? Anything else?
No, there's nothing very cool in my office. My coolest thing, I guess, in my mayor's office is, whenever I need encouragement, I look back to my dad, who served as mayor in the city of Mosinee many years ago, and I was one of his biggest supporters. And I keep a picture of him behind me with me holding up a sign from his first election, the night he won, and just reminds me of all the good work that he did. And I very much enjoy, as part of this job, trying to follow in his footsteps. So it's probably the coolest thing in my mayor's office.
You don't have the diploma from West Virginia or anything like that on the wall then?
Well, that's in my other office, so
That's
people
your
can
other
trust that I am educated to give them solid advice. So
Absolutely. Well, hey, we appreciate the time. Great story there about you and your dad. We'll love to hear those every now and then. And again, we always appreciate the time. We'll look forward to chatting again in the near future.
okay, well, thanks, Mike. Take care.